Today I'm going to tell you how I overcame anxiety, how I cured myself of panic attacks, what the journey was like, the path both personal and professional that I have followed. All of this to show you that it is indeed possible. I know that some of you who are watching or listening to me feel desperate, thinking that you will never get better, feeling like you're in a dead-end street. I make this video especially for you and with much affection to tell you that a human being, someone who has the same nervous system as you, was able to do it, so you will be able to do it too. Welcome. I am Nelson Arturo, a psychologist specializing in the treatment of anxiety. Although I have already shared part of my story in other videos, this time I want to make it more direct, more personal, because there are many new people who have come to the channel, and many people who, after the pandemic, are being affected by anxiety and sometimes don't know that this, your humble servant, was also affected by panic attacks. Anxiety disorders. I want to share my story with you, how it was. It all begins in February 1997, or February 6th, 1997. I was, like many of you, watching television in bed, and suddenly I started to feel my heart racing, my breathing quickening, and above all, a feeling of distress, I felt like I was bursting, literally. I mean, it was an eruption that I felt, and I also felt my hands numb, feet numb. Like many of you, I got up, went to the bathroom, I remember, splashed water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror and felt unreal. With all that, well, I thought I was going crazy. Schizophrenia. I thought I was already studying. I had started the second semester of psychology by then. I was young, 20 years old, huh? Yes, look how time has passed. And then, like many of you, I called a loved one. I called my mom, who at that time was a nurse and was on the night shift at the hospital where she worked, here in Pasto, in Nariño. Like many of you, I ended up that day in the emergency room. Very scared, very confused. There are some who, with these symptoms, think they are going to die, that it's a heart attack. There are others of us who think we are going to lose control. There are those two ways, right, of analyzing the issue, since the symptoms are very strong and very intense. Literally, it's an eruption, as I have explained in other videos. After they had me waiting for almost half an hour in the emergency room, the symptoms had already passed. And there began the same ordeal that I know you have experienced. And it's that the doctor examines you and I had nothing. The heart was fine by then. Remember that a panic attack lasts approximately 15 minutes. And while I was taking the taxi, and it was very distressing for me because I felt as if I were walking among clouds. Because paresthesias occur, that is numbness in the legs, in the hands. Since I had that numbness, I felt like I was walking among clouds, and that increased my feeling of madness, of losing control. When all that passed, half an hour later, the doctor examined me, and the typical heart, thyroid, and glucose tests began, and they all came out fine. And that's when they started to say, this seems to be anxiety, it seems to be a panic attack. I also began to go through what many of you have done between doctors, specialists, cardiologists. At that time, as I was studying psychology, a professor from the university back then said, well, yours. Or he did give me the correct diagnosis, right? But it didn't go so well for me. Look, I'll tell you why. He told me, yes, those are panic attacks and you're going to start taking imipramine, one of these little pills. Years later, I came to find out that it was terribly misprescribed, right? The diagnosis was correct. It was indeed panic attacks, but it was misprescribed in the sense that if you start with psychiatric medications, you should be given an antidepressant and a tranquilizer during the first 2 months. Because the first month, especially the tranquilizer, makes you worse, it will increase the symptoms. The cure is worse than the disease. And that happened to me. When they gave me the medicines, it was terribly bad. I had a week, of hell. I couldn't sleep, with a feeling of anxiety all the time. It was terrible, I'm telling you. I mean, it was misprescribed, you see. More than the medicine, it was misprescribed by this well-known psychiatrist. After so much effort, they prescribed me tranquilizers. Well, but I kept feeling bad and kept feeling bad. I lost that entire semester. And I, being a very diligent student with good grades, used to... In Colombia, it's called raising the flag. I don't know what it's called in your country. Being the top of the class in grades, the best state exam, which here in Colombia is called ICFES. That was terrible for me, failing subjects. Later I understood that I was also exaggerating, right? Look, I could have taken it more calmly, right? Due to my own eagerness, I validated 5 subjects by proficiency. Here in Colombia, that means you voluntarily take exams claiming that you have already studied on your own, and they give you an exam for each subject. And that took a lot of work and a lot of stress. Look, at 22, 23 years old, a lot of stress, right? And that in turn resulted in the panic attacks returning. There, look, I made what I now see as a mistake. And this mistake is very clear. This mistake that I'm going to tell you about. And it is the following. Like you, well, first of all, the medications did me terribly wrong. And in the midst of that anguish, I began to read. I ordered new magazines. For example, from the Anxiety Disorders Journal. That's in the United States Journal of Disorder. I think that's how it's pronounced, and all those kinds of magazines, scientific magazines, that have issues. I requested all of these from the National Library until they arrived at my university, and I translated them by hand. I mean, there was no Google Translate, no YouTube. With tutorials like there are now, there was nothing. So I had to do it by hand. A very slow and tedious job. And that's how I found something that changed my life and the lives of many of my patients. And this was that I discovered cognitive behavioral therapy, and especially a phrase mentioned by the great Epictetus, a Greek philosopher, which says that you do not get sick because of things, but because of the view you have of things. I mean you, my dear friend, even if your heart is racing, just like mine was at that time, or you were short of breath. The issue is that you have become ill, or it makes you sick because of how you interpret it. You interpret it as a heart attack or as imminent death. You imagine that your children will be left alone. Or in my case, we imagine losing control and running around like crazy. I imagined myself in a psychiatric hospital, tied up, and that scared me a lot. And that's when I began to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But 2 or 3 long years had already passed from when I started until I found ways to heal myself. I had to do it myself. Look, for me there was no psychologist or tutor. Nothing. I mean, it was just trial and error many times with myself. That's where I found it. Well, I already told you that the key to this is how you interpret things. How do you change that way of thinking? It's through an instrument called the Socratic debate. Well, here I leave you with other videos I have about that Socratic debate, which is very, very good. And I also read in magazines that one should expose oneself to the fear that anxious people have of their own bodies. Look, since I was a child, just like many of you. Look, little one, 6 years old or younger. I had asthma and it was, take me to the hospital. I'm dying. And look, and I was just a little kid there, so I felt like I was dying. Oh, since I was a child. I mean, I was a hypochondriac. Since I was a child, if a little spot appeared here, it was straight to the hospital. And since my mom was a nurse, the attention was quicker and everything was about the hospital. Everything was about death for me. I mean, from a young age, check your own case too, you'll find that you also have those tendencies to be very scared of your body, to think about death and tragedies. This leads us to fear our bodies. And I saw in these magazines that the main thing was, oh, sorry, I also forgot, a very important book. Look, that was like a watershed moment between the before and after. A book by Dr. Aurora Gabino called Panic Disorder, Evaluation and Treatment. It was published in 1997 and came into my hands. That was in Spain. It reached my hands around 1999 or so. Some time passed. And there it was, the ABC of treatment practically, which until now, the core, the center of the treatment, well, it has practically not changed. and it's what I'm going to tell you. Here, novel and very powerful elements have been added, like taking care of the microbiota, therapy, acceptance, all of which I've talked about in other videos. But the core is this. Look, you have to expose yourself to your body. That is, deliberately speed up your heart. I would go out for a walk or run to get rid of the fear of my heart racing. The first time I ended up in a panic, the first time I went out running. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, I already felt like I was suffocating, that I was getting dizzy. I went back. I remember holding on to some fences on the street because I felt dizzy. The next day I was able to walk, and it was better after that. And so each time you increase, then jogging, then you take it to 10 minutes, each time you increase the exercise. For me, it was the key to losing the fear of my body, to say that we increase the threshold of pain in your body. Doesn't your body scare you anymore along with it? Well, I'll tell you quickly, but this takes time, doesn't it? Through techniques like the Socratic debate, returning to logical thinking, stopping being magical. Look, for me, my great fear since I was a child was ghosts. And to this day, I'm still waiting for one to appear, right? So, ghosts have a completely magical way of thinking. How do you get rid of that? By doing experiments and staying alone at night to see if a ghost appears. So far, no ghost has appeared. I'm telling you, this. For you who don't have this ghost problem, it might be amusing. Is that so? Normal. Don't worry. I faced my fears. Also mental ones, not just ghosts. That is facing your body. Facing your worst fears. In my case, the ghosts. In my case, it could be staying alone in your house. Hey, what am I telling you? For others, it might be not having a partner. For others, being stuck in an elevator. It could be. That varies from case to case. So exposing oneself is technically called exposure in psychology. Exposing myself to my fears is what freed me from anxiety. Besides that, I had experienced, as often happens, it's almost, look, more than 90% of those of us who have this have been victims of domestic violence, which is what happened in my case, or sexual abuse. This second one is very common in women, not very common in women. And when they have an abuse, when they have a panic attack, for one reason or another, whatever the reason, they have it now in the present. It could be work-related, relationship-related, whatever. What happens is that they relive the symptoms from when they were being sexually abused as children or teenagers. Well, I was telling you that I had the misfortune of experiencing domestic violence from my father, an alcoholic father, a mother who was manipulative, emotionally and physically abusive as well. Man, I experienced abuse from both sides. So now that I had this written down, I'll tell you about the panic attack. Always feeling very, very fearful. I already told you about the ghosts, all that. And of course, bad interpersonal relationships, right? All of us, anxiety, depression, we have bad interpersonal relationships, right? Already, because of the history we've had. So to heal myself, let's say, from those deeper wounds, if you can say it like that, I wrote a book, right? Which is called The House of the Muses, right? You see, art helped me there, right? Writing that novel, right? And right now I'm writing another one called The Sacred Family. I'll tell you about it later. Or, well, for now, that's what it's called, right? The title is the last thing one chooses. Well, art helps us, right? Although for me, it was crucial. Yeah, but listen, it happened to me. Like I told you, I had to do it all by myself, with scientific books. Yes, but practically alone. I did have a professor who later went to the university, an expert in cognitive behavioral psychology. I would ask him a thing or two, and he would give me reasons. He would give me, well, some interesting notes, right? Because sometimes when you're alone, you make mistakes a lot, right? You do things wrong. For example, exposing myself. You see, the first time I went out jogging when I was scared to death, I should have gone out walking to the corner. Then the next day, a little further, walking. Things need to be done in order. In that way, I also overcame the pains I had from childhood. All this that I'm telling you, by then much more as an adult, right? I found a colleague who helped me a lot to get rid of that. And she made me realize that I had a tragic and catastrophic view of what could happen to me, right? I mean, I always felt, just like my body, the external environment was a threat to me. And obviously, That's not the case, right? There are threats, but they're not on every corner. It's better to enjoy life, to have a broader view of life. Another thing that helped me a lot is sweetening, if you can say, interpersonal relationships, right? Not so much driven by fear, but rather from understanding and connection with others. That helped me a lot. It sounds quick, but it requires a whole process. About the medications, which many ask me about, I was able to stop them like this. Look, I was taking them, look, from 97 until 2008, almost uninterrupted, because just like you, when I felt good. Then came younger psychiatrists who prescribed me newer medications, right? Fluoxetine, well, it's not entirely new, but it was prescribed to me. The first month of fluoxetine makes me feel bad. I tell you, it hits me terribly, even with a sedative. But well, I endured it. And by the second month, I was already feeling good. But then I made that mistake, which I have mentioned in other videos. I'll leave it here in the description of this audio, of this video. And it's that I stopped the medication quickly. Oh, just like that. I stopped it. I stopped it very quickly. I felt good today, and by tomorrow I would stop it. That is a serious mistake, folks. Because it's like if you had a broken leg and you needed to use a crutch, and even if your leg isn't healed, what you do is throw away the crutch. And of course that will cause your little bone injury, in this example, to worsen and make you fall. That's making an analogy with a fracture. That's what happens to us anxious people when we stop the medication all of a sudden. That medication, especially antidepressants, cannot be stopped from one day to the next. You have to gradually stop taking them over a period of 6 months to 2 years, some people say. Gently, you gradually lower the dose, gently, gently, gently. So, don't rush to stop the medications. There are also moments, right? I learned that it should be stopped at the right moments. As I told you, made mistakes. I was my own lab rat in this. And now, what I share with patients is how to do this process correctly. Stop them if you are taking them. Stop them at the right time and gradually reduce the dose. As I told you, it can take from 6 months to 2 years. This way you won't have any problems, believe me. Another thing that helped me a lot was the change in habits. I realized that I had very harmful habits with myself. For example, look, it seems innocent, right? Having a TV in front of me at night, watching television. Then I realized that it disrupted my nervous system and wouldn't let me sleep. For a long time I thought I was a night owl. I would say, oh, I don't sleep at night, but I do during the day. And when I finally removed the TV from my bedroom, I went back to sleeping normally from 10 to 6, more or less. The diet as well, look, the diet was, because my diet was like that of many young people, junk food. And for a while, well, I did have a girlfriend back then who loved, or we both loved junk food, like hamburgers, fries, sweets, desserts. We were very fond of desserts together. We would gift each other desserts. I gained about 10 kilos because of it. This leads to a very important point, which is sugar. Sugar I have mentioned in other videos, how the serotonin factory, which is the hormone that makes us feel good, is located here. Look, in the little stomach. There is no gland like the sweat gland that secretes serotonin. There isn't. It is produced here in your stomach, in something they have called the microbiota. It's a flora and fauna that produces many things, right? It helps us digest. And in that process, serotonin is concentrated here. Sugar, antibiotics, and a poor diet cause that microbiota to be wiped out. And we don't produce serotonin. Therefore, I didn't sleep well, I didn't eat well, and I had poor relationships with others. Notice that there are several things, right? It's a puzzle. It's not just one thing, it's not just the medicine, it's not just thinking well, it's not just losing the fear of your body. You have to have a complement of many things, look at relationships with others. In part, that's where this channel comes in, right? That I started in, by the time this video is made, about 7 years, a little more, of giving things simply because they come naturally to you. You want to help people. It's a set of things. Look, I had to make many changes, several. Look, one, sleep, all habits, right? Eating habit, sleeping, relating to others. Habits, all healthy. Exercise, I already told you from the beginning, I incorporated it. Healthy, strong exercise. Exercise, yes, look, you can forget to shower one day, whatever, to comb your hair, but not exercise. Exercise is also a key to increasing serotonin. So remember that you have to do several little things. Here I share with you the main ones in a quick way because I wouldn't have enough time. I also leave you here the links, an expansion of my story of the tools I have shared. From there, well, I went on to do a master's in clinical behavioral cognitive psychology, which is what had helped me, literally saved my life, as well as that of many of my patients. And now I find myself sharing how that process of personal liberation was, which I already told you I did it through trial and error, and I don't want you to do that. I want you to go down a safe, beautiful path. So allow me to guide you, hand in hand, with my colleagues, because as I have a high demand, many patients, sometimes I can't attend to all of them as I would like. So here we have several psychologists who also appear in the videos and help me. We are all here to make that path faster and easier. Approximately, look, in 4 months, you will be fine, I guarantee it. I also make this video to tell you that it is possible to overcome anxiety. A human being did it with a nervous system just like yours, with abilities equal to yours, and did it alone, moreover. I mean, which psychologist specializes in anxiety? Nothing. It was just me. If I did it with all those limitations and poorly formulated at the beginning, you will be able to do it too. You will also be able to gradually stop taking medications, don't rush. You will be able to improve your interpersonal relationships. Allow us to guide you on that path. You know, look, you're not alone. We are here to support you. Please, let me know your story with anxiety. I really appreciate your attention. And I'll see you in the next audio or video.